Well, when you're ready to start the meeting, you'll have to unmute yourself to do that. Also, Will, I should mention that I am doing this at home and forgot to bring the American flag home with me. So you guys are going to have to use your imagination to see a flag as you do the Pledge of Allegiance. I apologize for that.
Sure, we'll manage. Right. Well, I guess it's 7:01, so I guess.
We are up and running on my end.
I'll call to order this meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission this Monday, May 11th, 2020. And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
It has. All are present tonight except for Commissioner Alsager has not been able to join us yet, so hopefully she will be here shortly.
First on the agenda. I'm sorry. Just one second. Okay. Proclamations and presentation. We have one proclamation recognizing National Public Works Week, May 17th through the 23rd. And I will read that proclamation now. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life and well-being of the people of the city of Mount Pleasant. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens and civic leaders of Michigan to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Be it now therefore, I, William L. Joseph, Mayor of the City of Mount Pleasant, do hereby designate the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week, and urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals and to recognize the substantial contributions they make every day to protect our local and national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and the great seal of the city of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, this 11th day of May, 2020. Couldn't say it any better. Public Works are obviously a lot of the work that the city does. It goes sort of taken for granted, but is essential to our everyday lives. Jason Moore, our newly hired Public Works Director. Do you have any comments?
No, just I appreciate the proclamation.
Well, thank you, Jason. Next on our agenda, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I've got something before that, though. I did get an email from Commissioner Alsager. If someone could reach out to her and help her log on, I mean, as I say, I do it, but to be honest, I'm just not computer. I mean, I use WebEx. I use a variety of different browsers. This isn't my thing. Is there some?
Mayor, the IT director, Chris Saladin, is reaching out to Commissioner Alsager to see if he can assist her.
Thank you. Yes, there was something that came up in a communique to us earlier, and I think Manager Ridley sent it across. I'd like to have that added to the agenda if we could today.
Can you clarify the motion, Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, the motion is to take the communication, the email we got from the owner of Ponder Cafe, I think, and then there was a subsequent email that Manager Ridley forwarded as well. I'd like them added to the agenda tonight to discuss for a discussion if we could. I realize it's short notice, but it's also in the middle of a pandemic, and I think they're time-sensitive issues.
I guess I would ask for just a little further clarification because I know there's two communications you're talking about, but I guess I'd like, could you clarify the actual, like the action item that you would like discussed?
The action item would be to, well, I think discussion, I mean, coming up with an action item from that, but the action item would be to support, I'd vote in support of the recommendation to come up with a model to look at the fees for their extending into the roadway. There's a $550 fee apparently for extending into the roadway so that they could open up and have people come in and do takeout orders to keep their business alive. I forget what the exact fee is called, but if we discuss that motion, I'm sure it'll become available.
I guess I would offer just a substitute.
Sure.
To support a recommendation to look at fees relating to outdoor dining. You think that?
I think that'd be great. I'd like it specifically in reference to the communique that was sent to us. Yes, that's great.
Okay. This motion needs a second. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I second that motion.
Okay. I'd just like to recognize that Commissioner Alsager is now with us. And if you would, Jeremy, could you repeat the motion that we are at?
So I have discuss waiving outdoor dining patio fee. Is that close to what you said? Or do you want to repeat what you said again?
Sure, but I'd like to add that it's specifically in reference to the memo that Ponder submitted. So I mean, we can argue whether we're going to waive all outdoor patio fees or just address the issue that was raised in that one email. I think that's an issue, but I think if we just put the email on the agenda, then we can decide whether we want to waive them all or just deal with his or whatever. I'm not making an issue out of that, but sure.
All right, and that was
some different language. Well,
I guess I tried to clear it up saying support a recommendation to look at the to look at fees related to outdoor dining. If that's okay with you, George.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that was seconded by Vice Mayor Perschbacher. And I will recognize Commissioner Gillis for discussion.
Thank you. I feel a little blindsided by this addition to the agenda. 2 weeks ago, we discussed waiving fees and for different fees that be it building licenses or rental licenses. And during that work discussion, we decided as a group, I thought that 2 weeks ago, that we weren't going to pursue that on a piecemeal basis. I think that's also what you were looking for, George, when you had stated that you wanted a more comprehensive approach to economic relief, that you didn't want to take it piecemeal. And 2 weeks ago, I had said there are some things that were time sensitive, such as the late fees for water that we had to address. So between now and then, I'm not sure what has changed your view, George, or Commissioner Ronan, other than we did receive a letter asking us to waive, in particular, Ponder Coffee's deck fees. We are all experiencing, all of us, business owners and community members, some economic difficulties. So I am not in favor of taking this one business owner and then voting on a waiver for Ponder Coffee when we have other business owners in our downtown who will also be paying for that license for a deck. They do take 2 parking spaces. They are using our public property, taxpayer maintained. I don't feel we should be subsidizing it. I don't really feel we should be bringing that and adding it to the agenda without more information on how this can be fair and equitable for all business owners, and not just waiving the fee for one business owner who sent us a letter, Ponder Coffee. I can understand the economic situation everyone is in at this point, but to individually subsidize or waive fees for one person, where directly across the street, there would be another business owner who will be paying for his deck licensee's fee. And I'm sure that business owner will assume that if we're giving Ponder Coffee subsidizing or waiving their fee, why he shouldn't be getting also the waiver. So we are looking into opening up a can of worms that I thought we had already decided 2 weeks ago, because we didn't want to piecemeal everything. And I am very uncomfortable with picking one business owner to subsidize the fees for, and then another business owner that, you know, somebody might think that they can afford that fee. And so we're going to go forward with charging you for the use of our parking space downtown, where we're not going to charge someone else. So I'm not comfortable in adding it to the agenda this evening. Thank you.
I believe the next hand that was up was Commissioner Ronan, so I'll recognize Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I appreciate your concerns about this, Commissioner Gillis. My concerns during the last meeting were that I thought we had to stage in things. I thought we needed things immediately, things short-term and things long-term. So I argued for a comprehensive plan. Given that the commission was ineffective in doing that and the city was ineffective in doing that, then I see no other alternative than to address these issues as they happen. I think having a strategic plan where we talk about short-term, intermediate term, and long-term impact would be useful. Absent that, then I think we deal with these directly. I'm not suggesting that if we discuss this tonight, that it wouldn't include anybody who has a need for these types of dining facilities, and we could waive them all or waive his. All I know is that that was the stimulus, that was the information that was brought before us for discussion. I just want to discuss it. I'm not arguing whether it applies just to this one business or to all people who need these types of facilities. And I think the communique from Manager Ridley was quite clear in that the city's working on some plan that may obviate all of this. But I think putting it on the agenda for discussion in a timely way is all I'm asking for at this point.
Commissioner Tolis.
Good evening, all. I got one problem here with this. I think we're jumping the gun a little bit. He wants to waive his deck fee and wants to be able to have people sit out on the deck and wait for their food and drink. And I don't legally think you can do that under the governor's order right now. Other businesses can do it. You can't serve food out to them. What's stopping that customer from sitting on that deck, ordering a sandwich and then eat the sandwich on the deck? I mean, you have nothing back from the governor right now. I can see if the governor says, yes, you can do takeout and you can have outdoor seating. But that's not the case right now. So, and another thing, if we're going to ponder the 550, we need to waive everybody across the board because of the COVID-19 virus right now. So if it's granted by the governor that we can do it, then go ahead and waive everybody's for the year because of the pandemic. But I don't see how you're going to do this legally when it's not allowed right now. That's my question. You can do takeout. Well, if they want to do takeout, they can still do takeout. They're not at a disadvantage of that.
Manager Ridley, did you have something to?
I was just going to comment, Mayor, that typically at this point, when we're looking to add an item to the agenda, the discussion around it should be related to either adding it to the agenda or not, and not necessarily related to the merits of the request. The debate on the merits of the request should happen if it's added to the agenda, which would be our last agenda item. So I would just suggest that we save those debates for later, assuming it gets added to the agenda.
That is correct. Commissioner Alsager.
Just since reading and hearing a little bit about this, I would agree to putting it on the agenda and discussing it later.
Okay. Commissioner Gillis.
I still am not in favor of adding this to the agenda. I think that's what our work sessions are for. And so as not to look at an agenda item without having enough time to consider it. Most times that this has happened where we've added something to the agenda or we haven't fully vetted what all of us had as opinions, we either have said it or we walked back on it, and we don't look like we're a very thoughtful commission because we add things to the agenda. I appreciate your email yesterday, Commissioner Ronan, telling us that you're going to add something to the agenda. But like I say, I thought we discussed this 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure what has changed within the 2 weeks, but we weren't going to do piecemeal. But I'm sorry, I'm still not going to support adding it to the agenda.
Any further discussion? Seeing no hands up, we'll proceed to a roll call vote whether or not to add this item for discussion.
Mayor, I would just remind the commission, according to the ordinance, it takes 5 votes to have it added to the agenda, just as a point of reference.
Thank you.
Ready for the roll call? Okay. Commissioner Alsager.
Aye.
Commissioner Gillis.
Nay.
Commissioner Lalone.
Aye.
Commissioner Ronan.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis.
Nay.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Aye.
Mayor Joseph.
Aye.
That passes 5-2.
Okay. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? I'm going to offer a motion I motion that we schedule add to the agenda discussion for a special meeting for May 18th at 7 p.m., which is a week from today, to discuss fees and other items related to local economic relief. It seems to me that the discussion 2 weeks ago, we made some limited progress. We talked heavily about the tax late fee, and really, I think we sort of skipped over really talking. There wasn't a lot of interest in talking about fees. Now we're in a situation where there is a lot of concern about fees and how those relate to our local businesses. And I think that if we could sit down maybe next week to talk about this would give some time for staff to give us some more thorough research on the ins and outs of particular fees and how much money we can responsibly work with to help our local businesses and residents. I think one point of contention with the motion that just passed is that it involves one type of business and a limited number of businesses. And there is obviously room for to help, a wider range of people in our cities. So I'd recognize Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I support that.
Discussion? Commissioner Lalone?
Is this to replace the earlier agenda item that we are talking about, or is this a separate thing
This would
not
be a-
related to the last thing we just talked about?
This is a separate motion, and it would just add a special meeting for next Monday to talk about our local fees and other items of economic relief. So it's related, but it's not the same.
Okay.
Commissioner Alsager.
Well, I think I would support having it on the agenda, especially after the previous item, in case we decide not to take action on the previous item. It would give us a chance to get information for a more thorough discussion a week later.
Any other discussion? I see Commissioner Tolis has his hand up.
I'm a little bit confused here. I thought we discussed this and went over all this at our last meeting. And we were going to waive utility bills. We're going to waive the late penalties on taxes. And one other item. There was 3 items on there. Now you're telling me we're going to go back and rediscuss this just for a permit fee. I thought we weren't going to cut anything else. Stay pat and see what happens. We don't know what's going to happen around the corner. And I don't think we ought to be touching anything on that budget right now because we don't know where we're going to be. Nobody does. So what more fees are we going to cut than the 3 that we discussed? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And on this ponder fee, if you want to waive that, waive everybody else's for the year. It's very simple. We don't have to have a special meeting for that. But how do you allow something that's not legal right now to take place? It just doesn't make any sense to me, But I won't be supporting this. I don't think we need a special meeting, to do this.
Commissioner Ronan? George, you are muted right now, so nobody can hear what you're saying.
I apologize. I'd support the special meeting, and obviously, I think that the item we discussed I didn't know we were going to do that. And I think to be honest, I think we talked about immediate things at the last meeting. Now I think things are changing. I mean, we're talking about going into phase 4. The governor just today talked about in 2 weeks we'll be in phase 4. I mean, this is an evolving process. So, but as I argued 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, that we cut things immediately, and so, and I think it's a stellar idea.
Commissioner Gillis.
I will not be supporting a special meeting, but if you wanted to add it to a work session item 2 weeks from now, I would be more comfortable than having a special meeting. I think it would give staff more time, and I don't really think that we should have to call a special meeting for one business owner's request to eliminate their deck fee. Or we about a month ago, we had a request to start eliminating rental licensing fee. And nobody moved on that, for that individual. So I think this is very specific and individualized. And I don't feel comfortable doing that for one business owner nor one type of fee. So I won't be supporting this.
Seeing no other discussion, we shall move to a roll call vote.
Okay,
And this again needs 5 votes to pass.
correct. Commissioner Toles,
Nay.
Commissioner Ronan. What was that? It didn't come through.
Yay, yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Aye.
Commissioner Gillis,
Nay.
Commissioner Alsager,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Aye. Yes.
That motion fails 4-3.
All right. Do we have any more additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I will open up the first section for public comment on agenda items. We don't have any members of the public, it looks like, on our Zoom meeting. The public was able to submit public comment to the comment@mt-pleasant.org email address. And if the members of the public do wish to join our meeting, they still can. And there is a second option, the second opportunity for public comment later in the meeting. Manager Ridley, did we have any emails submitted for public comment?
Yes, Mayor, there was one email submitted and it's related to an item that's on the agenda, so I will read it to you. The comment was from Glenn Irwin of 1018 Sweeney Street, Unit C, and he indicates, to the Mayor and City Commission, I voted against the capital improvement plan at the last Planning Commission meeting. Due to technical difficulties, I was not able to voice my reasons for my negative vote. I do not object to any of the capital improvements. However, the plan contains special assessment proposals, one of which is for the alley project downtown. As I have stated before, the creation of a triple tax zone in Mount Pleasant is counterproductive and will result in even faster property value declines than we presently endure. The faster that property values decline, the faster that city revenues will decline. Also, the rationale as stated in the capital improvement plan for the special assessment is that TIFA has ended, so the assessment is necessary. The reason that TIFA no longer has funds is because it was defunded by the City Commission. To my knowledge, the defunding of TIFA was not even discussed by the City Commission. If it was so brief that it was not even noticed. To my knowledge, the TIFA board was not even consulted. The property owners in the CBD were not even notified of this change in city policy. I would ask the City Commission to reconsider the special assessment proposals and to reconsider the ending of TIFA. With the massive cutbacks at CMU and the increasing number of bankruptcies in town, policies geared toward increasing business confidence should be considered. Thank you. And again, that was from Glenn Irwin.
I will now close the public comment section and move to receipt of petitions and communications. Manager Ridley.
Yes, under receipt of petitions and communications, you have the report on pending items. And I'm sure you noticed that we grouped the potential work session items based on the responses that we received from the 7 commissioners about priorities. So the second page of that report looks much different than your prior reports. And it also includes the monthly report on citizen complaints. You also received the report that was requested a year ago on the purchasing policy amendments. And at that time, the purchasing policy was changed so that the items requiring city commission action was increased from $10,000 to $20,000. And you asked that a report be provided of anything that was purchased over the year that was in that range. So the report that was given to you lists the 11 items, who we purchased them from, a brief description of what it was, and the dollar amount of those 11 purchases. You also had correspondence that was received regarding the potential rerouting of High Street as indicated in the draft master plan. And this communication was from Matthew Robertson in support of that rerouting. And then you had a correspondence from Brandon and LaBelle regarding summer tax bills and some requests that they had for specifically the LaBelle owned properties regarding potential payments for those tax bills. And as you know, you have an agenda item for that this evening. In addition to that, we had 2 other communications that came in after the packet was put together. And one of them is the one that was referenced earlier in the discussion. It was a communication from Aaron Cromar of Ponder Coffee regarding the outdoor seating fee. And since you all received it, and also since we're meeting virtually, it's hard to give you hard copies of it. So you don't have that, but since you all received it, I won't take the time to go through the specifics of it. But we also received a written communication from Deb Carey of Consano, and this one was handwritten. And so I will read it to you because it's brief and none of the rest of you saw it. But the communication says, "Greetings, Nancy. Please extend my gratefulness to the powers that decided to forego my business contribution to the Michigan Street construction project due to the COVID-19. I was meaning to do this in person at a commission meeting, but with the extension of stay at home, I am not sure when that will happen. Please thank those who decided to forego the contribution to Michigan Street. Warm regards, Deb Carey." And those are the only things we have under receipt of petitions and communications.
Okay. Next on our agenda are the Commissioner Gillis. I'll recognize you.
Just 2 comments. Glenn Irwin for the public is one of our planning commissioners that Commissioner or Ms. Ridley spoke of with the correspondence. He's on our planning commission. And I also want to acknowledge our public safety for the starting of a new year, protecting our citizens and community members and the role they play, and their outstanding service to us, and of course, the no complaint summary. Thank you, Director, and thank you, law enforcement.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar, or consent items. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing no hands up, Manager Ridley, would you like to go through our consent items?
Yes, we've proposed 4 items for the consent calendar this evening. The first one is approval of the minutes of your regular meeting from April 27th. The second is a request to extend our existing contract with Brown & Brown. And what Brown & Brown does for the city is they provide broker services that provides assistance with our health insurance plan design, compliance, contracts, and other such information related to our self-funded health insurance plan. The current contract was bid in 2017 and was awarded to Brown & Brown at that time for 3 years. And we have been very pleased with their performance. We had planned to bid the project this year, but Brown & Brown has offered to extend the contract for 1 additional year at the current rate with no changes. And so we are therefore recommending an extension of that contract for 1 year and request that you authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign that contract. This third thing under the consent calendar is another change to our standard lighting agreement with Consumers Energy. You've had a number of these changes related to changes with the lighting agreement. And as you know, each change requires action by the City Commission. This change is for the removal of a Consumers Energy owned light that is in parking lot 7, which is just north of the library. And during reconstruction of that parking lot this summer, consumers will remove the light and a city-owned light will instead be installed. And this is common practice in parking lots as we reconstruct those parking lots for the city to take ownership of those lights. So we're recommending approval of the resolution that would authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign that amendment. And then lastly, we have the approval of payrolls and warrants.
Commissioner Gillis? Lori, you're muted right now.
Thank you. I move that we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Toles?
Support.
Okay. Discussion? Seeing no hands up. I see Pete's hand up, but I believe that was for the support.
Excuse me. Yes, it was. Sorry.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll go for a roll call vote to approve the consent calendar items.
Right. Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Toles,
Yes.
Commissioner Allesiger,
Aye.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
motion passes.
Right. We have no public hearings tonight, so next on our agenda is item number 9, which is to consider a resolution extending conditional approval of medical marijuana license for 3967 Ulicid LLC. Manager Ridley, did you have any opening comments?
Yes, just a couple, Mayor. A conditional approval for both a medical marijuana provisioning center and a grow operation was given to 3967 Euclid LLC, and that conditional approval expires in August. The conditional approval required the applicant to complete 4 steps within 18 months of receiving the conditional approval, and the applicant has completed 3 of the 4 steps. A letter is included in your packet from the applicant requesting a 6-month extension to complete item number 4 due to the executive orders and the pandemic. Under the medical marijuana ordinance, the City Commission does have the authority to extend the conditional approval past the initial 7 or 18 months that was allowed. So approval of the resolution that's in your packet would extend the conditional approval to dates in early February of 2021. And that resolution was reviewed and approved by the city attorney. So we recommend you approve the resolution as drafted in your packet.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I move to support the extension of the resolution.
Commissioner Gillis?
Second.
Discussion? Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand up. Okay. I think this, I'll make a quick comment. Our last meeting, we also made some extensions for our recreational licenses. The shutdown has made gaining some of the supplemental materials for these business owners difficult. And this is obviously, I think, a good path forward to let some time pass, allow them to get their materials in order and to get their businesses started as soon as they can. So I'll be supporting this. Seeing no other discussion, we can move for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Alsager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gillis,
Aye.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
You muted yourself.
Oh. Yeah,
Commissioner Tolis.
Aye.
Was that an aye?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
motion passes.
Next in our agenda is item number 12, which is the item that we added to the agenda tonight.
Mayor, you missed item number 10. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 10 is to consider a resolution waiving our summer tax bill late fee charges and confirmation of waiver of late fees on utility bills until June 15th and authorization for utility billment payment plans. Manager Ridley, would you like to give us some comments?
Yes, as was mentioned a little bit earlier in the agenda, you had a work session discussion at your April 27th meeting and provided some general direction about some items that you were willing to consider for formal action regarding some local relief that we might be able to do for our businesses and our residents. And this resolution was drafted by the city attorney based on that general direction that we heard a couple weeks ago. And in summary, what this resolution would accomplish is three things. It would confirm the administrative decision that was already made before the most recent utility bills were printed and mailed that would waive late fees on the utility bills not paid by May 15th. Secondly, it would confirm that late fees would start to be charged after that on the June 15th bills, but would give the staff the authority to start setting up payment plans for customers based on individual requests that need payment plans. And it would allow those payments to be spread out to be paid off no later than December 31st of this year. And then thirdly, what it would do is it has to do with summer tax bills. And our local charter requires that summer tax bills be due on July 31st. Many areas in the state do not have their summer tax bills due until September 15th. So what this approval of this resolution would do is it would waive any of the local penalties on tax bills that are not paid by the July 31st due date for the summer bills as outlined in the charter. And those late fees would be waived through September 14th. But after September 14th, the state law takes effect for summer tax bills, and state law requires that an additional 1% per month of interest penalty be charged for each month that the bill is unpaid. So the city commission does not have authority to waive or change those penalties from September 15th or later. Certainly property owners can make partial payments after that time on the summer tax bills, but the penalties would still be charged as required by state law. There is one section in this resolution that I need to point out was not discussed at your last work session, and it has to do with properties that have escrow accounts set up. This resolution would not waive penalties between the July 31st date and the September 14th for properties that have escrow accounts, because in those instances, the taxes have already been collected and are sitting in a bank account at the escrow company waiting to be paid to the city commission on the standard due date. So there's really no hardship by paying by the due date. So there would be no waiver of fees for those escrowed accounts. So we're recommending, based on your discussion at the last work session, that you approve this resolution as presented, which would confirm the ability to set up utility bill payments, not assess late fees on utility bills through May 15th, and then not assess penalties on summer tax bills from August 1st to September 14th.
Okay. We got a lot of hands up. I'm just going to go in order of what I saw them. So Commissioner Ronan,
Yeah, I move to support the resolution for waiving the summer tax bills and the other bills that Mayor Ridley identified.
okay. Commissioner Tolis,
I will second the approval of the resolution for waivers as presented.
okay. And for discussion, Commissioner Alsager,
I think the city did the due diligence that we asked them to do, did the research, has figured out what we do have some control over and what we don't. Doing a temporary postponement for the summer tax bills could be very helpful to people, so I will be supporting this resolution. This motion.
no further discussion. All those in, or Commissioner, oh, okay. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I'd also like to thank the city for taking, this is a fairly large project to get done in a very quick period of time. And I'm very, very appreciative of the amount of due diligence in the way in which we handled to sort of really quickly get relief to the people. Well, what a wonderful job the city's done in this regard. So I just want to say thank you as well. I think it was terrifically done.
I think as a city, we have limited levers to pull to help our residents, and I think this is an important one. Seeing no further discussion, we'll go to a roll call vote and proceed.
Okay. Commissioner Gillis,
Aye.
Commissioner Lalone,
Aye.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Aye.
Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay. Now we are on to item number 12, which is the added agenda item. I would ask Commissioner or Jeremy, or can you repeat the motion that was put on the agenda? Or I guess the wording.
We don't have a motion, but the item that you put on the agenda at this point is discuss a recommendation to look at fees related to outdoor dining.
Okay.
Was the item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Right now, the thing is when we got together with the work session and we discussed the different ways that we could help the residents and small business owners, we did talk about that it would be more helpful to do an immediate, set of things to do, a mid-level set of things to do, and a long-term, because as Commissioner Tolis has said many times, we do not know how long this is going to affect our city. We don't know how long this is going to affect our state. We do know that the governor has put into form some phases that we're going through. Hopefully we're going to be moving into phase 4 soon. It depends on, our numbers and the testing. I know that she is looking at testing way more people than we have in the past week, so that hopefully we'll get a better idea of where the spread is and how to contain it a little bit better. But one of the things that I feel strongly about is the fact that when our small businesses are able to open, they are going to, especially our restaurants, those that were not doing carry out or delivery, they are going to need that extra little boost. But I also know that being in a downtown, the downtown area, the merchants are going to discuss possibly closing off a couple of streets downtown. And that would open up people having the ability to have, you know, outdoor seating too. The governor seems to be leaning towards, if you have a restaurant and you have 10 booths, you only get to use 5, you know, because they want to have that social distance. If we close off the streets and people can put seating on the sidewalk or whatever, and it gives the people that have 10 booths, 5 outside, 5 inside, and I think that's reasonable. But what we're looking at right now with this is, as they are starting to open, it's only reasonable that we give them a little bit of a break so that they can move forward. And I'm not saying waive the entire fee. I'm saying let's waive it. It's supposed to be for 8 months. Let's figure out what a month of that fee would be for these people. Waive that month, reassess in June, see if we waive it from June on, or, you know, depending on our economy, depending on where we are. We may open up and then in the middle of June, we're down to sheltering in place again. We have no idea. A lot of places are going through a second wave right now. We just want to be proactive on this and say, hey, let's look at this, see if we can give you a little bit of a reprieve on this, and see if this will help kind of boost your business, boost your economy, so that we don't lose a bunch of businesses. We're going to lose small businesses if we're not willing to try and help them out.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher, I appreciate your comments. We need a motion before we jump into discussion. So are you willing to offer a motion?
I move that we that we look at, that we give a month by month assessment of the fee that we charge for downtown outdoor seating for dining. Is that clear?
I guess I would ask you to clarify that a little bit more.
Okay. Let's see, how do we clarify this? I would like to have a motion that I'm going to motion that we allow for a reprieve month to month, depending on the status of the economy and the status of the COVID, of the outdoor seating fee that we charge downtown restaurant businesses.
I'm looking at Jeremy and Nancy. Does that make
Let me
sense?
give an example to see if this helps with you. In this instance, the fee would be $550 for 8 months, because there's a $50 application fee, and then it's $125 per parking space. And this business has typically used 2 parking spaces. So if you look at a fee of $550 that typically covers March to November, is your motion, Vice Mayor Perschbacher, that we would take that $550, divide it by 8, and just charge a monthly fee?
Yes.
So we would charge 1 month at a time at 1/8 of it.
Yes.
Okay. We need a second on that motion for that to be discussed. Commissioner Ronan?
I second that motion, and thank you, Manager Ridley, for your help with that. But I absolutely second it. Yes.
I
Okay.
guess one clarification I forgot though, Mayor, that I should ask before you start debate. Would this apply to all of the outdoor dining licenses, or would this only apply to Ponder Coffee in your motion, Vice Mayor?
I think it should apply to all outdoor dining licenses.
Okay. Commissioner Lalonde?
Can we just waive it for everybody and be done with it? Because like it could possibly, the city cannot be making more than $2,000 off of this, and it can help small business. Can we just do that?
You could offer an amendment. Are you
Yeah, I'll do an amendment. The amendment, can we, wait, okay. The amendment to what motion?
Well, we have one motion on the floor is to charge month by month.
Oh, no.
Month by month for the outdoor dining fee. It sounds like you want to offer an amendment that would just waive the outdoor dining fee completely.
I think it just should be a separate thing instead of an amendment. I would vote no on this amendment and then or vote no on this motion and then bring another motion saying to just waive outdoor dining fees for everybody. That is what I want.
Mayor, do you want me to state the motion as I have it to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about right now?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, I took a little bit of liberty, so tell me if this still is getting it. So allow for prorated monthly fee for the remainder of the year for outdoor dining fees for all applicants.
That sounds like the motion we have on the floor to me.
Okay.
I recognize Commissioner Tolis.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend this. I have to agree with Commissioner Poshbacher. We ought to just waive it. We're not talking a big amount of money, number one. Number two, most of these restaurants are going to open back up, are only going to be able to open up at about 25% capacity, which most of them aren't going to be able to make it. Let's just put it that way. They work on a 10 to 15% margin. This is not going to happen. And we're only talking, I don't know how many it is, Manager Ridley, how many dining licenses we have? Maybe 3, 4?
Mr. Tolis, last year we had, I believe, 3 outdoor dining licenses and 3 sidewalk licenses. And they added up to a total revenue of around $1,500 or $1,600.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, let's just waive it, get it done, and get it over with. I mean, we want to give all those businesses an incentive, and a lot of them aren't going to open back up. You know, you already have one in town that's already filed bankruptcy, and there's going to be more that are going to follow, because you just can't do an establishment on 25% occupancy. You're not going to bring all your employees back in. You're still going to have as much product that you have in there, you know, to supply people. So most places are going to have to come up with $10,000, $15,000 just to restock their inventory. I mean, we're only talking $1,500, $1,600, people. Just let's waive it for the year.
Okay. So we have an amendment to the original motion to waive the outdoor dining fee in entirety. We need a second for that motion. I see Commissioner Lalone.
Second.
Okay, now we can go into discussion of waiving the outdoor dining fee completely. And Commissioner Gillis.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
can I clarify real quick? So basically that amendment, what I have down is to strike out, allow for the prorated monthly fee and insert waive the fee entirely. So it would say waive the fee entirely for the remainder of the year for the outdoor dining fees for all applicants. So you're taking out that one section and replacing it with waive the fee entirely. That is the amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, that sounds right.
Okay.
Commissioner Tolis, does that sound right?
That sounds right, but I'd like to add that's only for existing businesses right now that have an existing license, please.
Nobody has an existing license, Commissioner Tolis. They all expire at the end of each year. So there are no existing licenses.
Well, I would say that previous existing licenses, okay? I don't want somebody to come in and say, well, you gave these people a free license. I want a license now, okay? So that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay.
So that would change a section on the end of it. Instead of
Right.
saying all applicants, it would say previously existing applicants.
Thank you.
So I think I'm gonna need a second, because that's a change, I believe, in what was probably originally understood. So if there's a second for that amendment, I need a hand in the air. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I will second that.
So you're wanting to amend the amendment?
Can we do that?
Is that how you want to do this?
I think he was just making sure, Jeremy, that there was a second for that because it was different. So he took away the second from the original one. So just to, instead of having two amendments, I think you could just have one amendment.
Right.
That's what I was going to suggest, is if Commissioner Lalone is okay with that second.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Whatever works, man.
So I guess I would just want a point of clarification. So if you've never had an outdoor dining license before, you would not be eligible for this. That's what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay. All right. For discussion, Commissioner Alsager.
I think with the change, this is a good proposal and I will be supporting it.
I have a slight problem. I think I would rather just have it open to any applicant. I don't think that we have a lot of businesses that are going to be able to take advantage of this in the first place. And I think the economic impact to the city is very limited. So I'm more open to allowing this to be open to any outdoor dining applicant for the rest of the year to have no fees. So I will not be supporting this amendment. Commissioner Gillis.
I have reservations. We discussed about the food truck licensing fee, waiving that because a food truck wanted to do business and the licensing fee of $1,000, he felt that would impact his idea of servicing downtown Mount Pleasant with his food truck. And so we decided against waiving those food truck licensing fees. I know of developers and landlords that are asking for some economic relief by eliminating their rental licensing fees, even building permits and such. I don't want to get into the realm of having to go down every one of our fees and decide if we're going to eliminate that fee or still expect to be purchased for that type of activity. So I have a problem with piecemealing certain fees in. I do, if this were to pass, I would feel more comfortable with people that have previously invested into outdoor dining being able to waive that fee, rather than anybody that's decides all of a sudden they want real estate on our streets, because that is publicly owned streets that they are now encompassing and taking on for their own business, and we're asking them to pay nothing to us as the city or the city taxpayers which maintain that street. I also normally have problems giving up parking spaces. Downtown has limited parking. This summer, I don't think will be as bad as previous summers because most of the colleges have gone, or college students have gone home. But I still know the people that work downtown have a fairly hard time of finding public parking spaces, on-street parking, in parking lot parking. So I just don't feel comfortable with this added to the agenda, nor do I feel piecemealing one fee being waived, another person's fee not being waived, and the fact that we are taking up public parking spaces, are city taxpayer funded and maintained places, and allowing businesses to use them free of charge. So I would hope that we would find some other economic relief that was more fair across the board. But I can see that we probably have at least 4 commissioners that are in agreement with this. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to recognize Mike Homier, our city attorney.
Thank you. You know, the only issue that I have is with trying to separate out between past permit holders and those who are similarly situated now. In as much as nobody has a permit now, and then treating them dissimilar based on past issuance of licenses that are not now in effect. I, from a legal perspective, would be much more comfortable with saying those existing restaurants rather than trying to pick and choose between those past license or permit holders than existing businesses that may want to get into outdoor dining, because you run the risk of an equal protection problem.
I think I think that's very helpful for the discussion. And thank you, Mike. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Is it possible? Well, first I want to address the fact that a food truck is not a brick and mortar. A brick and mortar pays taxes to the city. The food truck only pays a fee. And I am more in favor of giving some relief to the brick and mortars in town than I am to the food trucks, just because of that, because the brick and mortar, they're in our town, they're in our community, and they're paying taxes. I do agree with the mayor that this should probably be something that should go across the board, because of the fact that whenever we open up to saying yes, you, but not you, we end up having issues. And I don't see anybody downtown. I mean, if they're going to put the expense in to buy all of the equipment, all of the wood and everything to build a patio in front of their business, they're already, you know, they're already adding to themselves, and telling them they get to have the extra expense that other people already paid for or haven't paid for this year is just not fair. I wondered, can I do a friendly amendment to this and say that I would like to add, I know that the mayor already did, but I would like to add that this encompasses everyone that in the downtown area.
I just point of clarification, I don't think that is a friendly amendment, because it changes the meaning of the motion. But if you would like to offer an amendment to the amendment, that is acceptable.
Okay, well then I'm going to step back and I'm going to allow this to be voted on, and then I'll bring up an emotion.
Okay. Manager Ridley, I see your hand up.
I was just going to suggest one thing to think about as you continue to discuss this. As I mentioned, the fee is dependent on how many parking spaces a business uses for their outdoor patio when you're looking at the outdoor patios. So if we waive the fees, the 3 existing businesses who had one last year are probably not going to modify their patios to try to take up more parking spaces. But a new business who develops one may consider how many parking spaces they want to take up, because there's no financial obligation. So if you continue to go down this road discussing this, we may want to put a limit on the number of parking spaces that an individual business can use.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Mike Homier, or City Attorney, I see your hand up.
Sorry, didn't take it down.
Okay. All right. I will recognize Commissioner Tolis for discussion on the motion.
Well, I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment. Let's go with the existing restaurant businesses that are there now. And they cannot exceed the size of the patio they already have existing. And that should cover it, I think.
I would just ask our city attorney, Mike Homier, on that amendment, should we add a specific language to parking spots? Because I think no offense, but I think it's a little vague, the motion brought forward by Commissioner Tolis.
Yeah, I think I suppose the difficult, the way I understand the motion is for existing restaurants, you would process permit requests the same way you would in a normal manner, right? So if somebody came in and they said, we want a permit for outdoor dining, this is how many spaces we want, this is how long you would charge them a fee, this is otherwise waiving that fee. If you want to put a limitation on that, now is the time to do so.
Okay. So Commissioner Tolis, you said in your motion to include all existing businesses and existing patio space, but I guess that doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't cover, what if you have a business that's never done it before? Where do they fall in that motion? So if you wanted to make
that would have to be approved in a whole different ball game. If you want to put a new patio up, you'd have to come to the commission to get that approved. I'm saying you have maybe 3 business down restaurants that have existing patios right now. They're going to put the same one back in, and that's all you can do. You're limited to putting that same patio back in. You can't, a patio takes maybe 1.5 parking spots. You can't say I'm going to put one in that takes 10 spaces now, is what I'm saying. I'm trying to keep it simple. You cannot put anything bigger than it's existing from before.
I guess I'm just seeing how is that different than your original amendment? Because that, to me, that seems like it's only including businesses that have already had a dining license. And I think the point of the amendment to the amendment is to include any applicant. And I think Mike Homier was sort of suggesting that we should, if there's a limit to the space that you want to use, that we should include that. So I just want to clarify that.
What are we going to do? Take the measurement of each patio that's out there right now? With all due respect, Mayor, all I'm trying to do is provide some kind of financial assistance to the people that we're trying to support right now that are taxpayers in this city. I don't see what's so hard to understand about that. You had the same size patio, that's the same size you can put in now, and we're waiving the fee.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify your motion, Pete. I think we're all trying to help small businesses in our community.
Mayor Joseph, can I make a comment? The confusion is, number one, if we're going to allow business owners who have never put in a deck or a outdoor dining, are we going to allow them also to be waived? And for those people that have never put a deck in before, that are going to put a new dining deck out, we need, if that's what the commission decides, that we're going to allow previous business owners who put a deck out, yes, they're waived. The fee is waived. New restaurant owners that want to put an outdoor dining deck, we're going to waive their fee too, because we don't want to say one who previously last year had a deck on gets it for free. Now this new person who wants to put a deck, they don't get it for free. The problem is, we all know that either 1 or 2 spaces, parking spaces, has been taken from previous businesses who paid the deck licensing fee. We want to make sure if someone new comes into the ball game and says, well, I want to put an outdoor dining deck in, but I want to take 4 spaces and I want them all free. They can do that. The way this motion is read, they can take as many spaces as they want. In, let's say they owned 2 businesses side by side. They could take those 2, it might show up, it might end up being 4 angled parking spaces. Are we going to give them 4 parking spaces because they want 4 parking spaces? We could eliminate this by just saying you are allowed 2 each. If you only need 1, or see, like Midori, they have 1. They don't need 2. And if they did have 2, they'd be overflowing into someone else's front store or storefront window. So, I mean, I would only assume that they can only take the parking spaces directly in front of their business at the maximum of 2. So if you, I mean,
I think that's what I'm just trying to clarify, because Pete included that we wouldn't, he seemed to try to include some language about not allowing expanded dining options. I just wanted to clarify that point. And so it was, and that's all I'm trying to do. So we still need a second for that amendment to the amendment to go forward with discussion. So Commissioner Lalone?
Whose amendment are we talking about? Lori's?
All right, no.
For
Lori
love
didn't
of God.
Okay. Lori didn't make it a moment or a motion.
Okay. Just
Jeremy?
trying to keep track of this.
We are talking about the amendment to the amendment, which is to include all existing restaurants. And then I think I just had a little confusion about what Pete was saying about existing dining space, because I don't think that covers new restaurants who want to have an outdoor dining this coming year. And so I was just looking for some clarification on that. And I guess Jeremy, do you have a motion written down?
No, I guess I don't think it's the amendment piece. I'm still not clear on existing restaurants downtown is what I heard Commissioner Tola say. I guess that could be interpreted a couple of different ways. So I would like some clarification on, does that mean existing restaurants, like all restaurants downtown, or existing restaurants that had these in the past, which is what the amendment, the first amendment actually said, was previously existing applicant.
Existing restaurants with existing decks.
Okay, I think that is already included in your original amendment then, if it's just
That's
previously
what I
existing.
thought. That's what I thought, but I'm, confused now.
And I think the question that Mike had brought up was, should that be expanded to all? And I think that's where some of the confusion was we were trying to figure out if that amendment to the amendment was talking about all businesses downtown and setting a limit on the number of parking spaces. So I don't have a clear amendment to amendment.
Yeah, that's why, Jeremy, I used existing 2 times in that motion. Existing businesses, existing decks. It's simple.
And that is already, I think, in your original amendment, if that's all you're trying to get at.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I don't believe we have now an amendment to the amendment. We are just dealing with the original amendment, which is to include existing restaurants and existing decks. Is that understood?
Mhm.
Okay, seeing a lot of head. Okay. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Ronan for discussion.
Yeah, I just, I apologize for my ignorance. I probably should have studied all this before, but my assumption is that they're just applying to the commission, or they're applying to someone to have this take place. That's what the application fee is for. That's what the cost is, and if they get it, there's a cost associated with it, right? So somebody vets this application. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding?
Yes.
Yes. The issue of whose application it is or what application it is a moot point because it's going to come before the commission and the commission is going to say, oh, it doesn't come. But who does it come before, Nancy?
If they've previously had a deck and there's no changes to it, staff approves
Okay.
those licenses.
But if there's another one, then it comes to the commission.
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, all we have to do is waive the fee, and the same thing. I mean, the people who already exist. The new people would have to come in, and it'd have to be approved by the commission. So we have control either way. I don't even understand what this whole argument's about, to be honest. But I mean, it just seems like if we just go with the initial emotion, everything's done, and we can go home.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Right?
I'm already home.
Yeah, okay.
Jeremy, could you read the motion just one more time for me?
The motion or the amendment?
Oh my God.
The amendment.
The amendment, okay. The amendment is to basically strike out, and I guess I kind of have to refer to the original motion to do that, because your original motion said, or Commissioner Perschbacher's original motion said, allow for prorated monthly fee, and we're striking that out and putting waive the fee entirely. And then for the remainder of the year for outdoor dining fees and originally the motion said all applicants, and that's being changed to previously existing applicants. So I'll read the amendment says waive the fee entirely for the remainder of the year for the outdoor dining fees for previously existing applicants.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Gillis.
Thank you. This has been really down the rabbit hole this evening. I understood Mike saying that would show some difficulty in a legality situation, that if we said to someone who had a deck out last year, we're going to waive your fee, but some new restaurant owner that comes in this year and wants to put in a deck and we say, we're going to charge you. I think, and clarify if I had that wrong, Mike, but I heard you say that there might be some legality about denying one person a waiver, but if you had one in last year, you get one.
Yeah, so I think you can differentiate between new restaurants coming into town, opening up and applying versus existing restaurants that may be operating in the city. But it's difficult to distinguish between existing restaurants that had permits in the past, don't have permits now, versus those new restaurants that are existing in the city applying for outdoor dining. I think the easiest way to deal with it is to say all fees are waived for outdoor dining for existing restaurants in the city that qualify under your permit application for no greater than 2 parking spaces. If there's 3, then make it 3. But then you've treated all existing restaurants equally, regardless of whether or not they had a permit in the past, which I don't find to be a distinguishing characteristics between them.
Okay,
Commissioner Gillis.
thank you. I don't want to put an amendment to an amendment, but what Mike just said is probably the better way to go. So if someone wanted to retract their motion, we could start anew and I could make the motion exactly what Mike said, if you wanted to. I'm going to leave it there.
It might be, I would guess it might be more simple to vote and then offer a new motion.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I see several hands up. If those hands are not meant to be up, if you could take those down. I don't see any hands up now. So I think we can proceed to a vote on the amendment. And Jeremy, I would ask one more time that you read the the amendment that we're going to vote on.
Okay. It basically is striking, the amendment is to strike out portions of the original amendment. So striking out, allow for prorated monthly fee, replace that with waive the fee entirely, strike out all applicants, and replace that with previously existing applicants. So essentially, if this amendment were to pass with the strikeout and replace, you would end up with an original motion that would say waive the fee entirely for the remainder of the year for the outdoor dining fees for previously existing applicants. Because those two pieces on the ends are what you're voting on as amendments to that original motion right now. If that passes, you would go back up to the original motion. If it fails, you still go back up to the original motion, just not as amended.
Right.
If both fail, then you're back to square one and you could make another motion.
Unless the maker of the motion wants to remove the motion. I don't know what the word is. It's not remove.
Withdraw.
Withdraw. Thank you.
That would have to be done by Commissioner Tolis and Malone for the amendment. They would have to withdraw that amendment, and then Commissioner Perschbacher and Ronan would have to withdraw their amendment or their original motion, but you'd have to do it in that order.
This is getting so complicated. I'll just withdraw my motion. It just doesn't make any sense that we're wasting this kind of time on it. Just waive it and get it done. Now our attorney's talking about, oh, well, this might not be fair. Somebody might sue us. Who the hell is going to sue you? Seriously, I'll withdraw my motion. This is ridiculous.
Commissioner Lalone, are you okay with that withdrawal?
Wasted a half.
Yeah, yes, I'm okay with that. Yes.
Now we are back to the original motion, and I would ask Jeremy. Well, first I will recognize Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my original motion.
Okay.
And I would like to replace that motion. Can I do that in one breath?
Commissioner Ronan, are you okay with that withdrawal
I am.
of the original motion?
Okay, so I motion that we waive outdoor dining fees for downtown brick and mortar dining establishments that do not exceed 2 parking spaces. Is there clarification that needs to be done on that?
Can you read that one more time? You had that written down.
Yep. I motion that we waive outdoor dining fees for downtown brick and mortar dining establishments that do not exceed 2 parking spaces.
Support.
Perfect.
I'm going to recognize Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, support.
Okay. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Perschbacher and support by Commissioner Gillis. Discussion, Commissioner Alsager.
Only one is, do we need to put a time frame on that for this year or for this season? That's a question.
Probably, yeah, probably should be for the 2020 dining season, outdoor dining season.
Thank you.
I would,
Adding that.
I would say, is that a friendly amendment to the?
I knew you were going to ask that.
No, we're not going down there.
It's fine.
But I just, we have to be clear.
Yes, yes.
So I think we have a friendly amendment to that, to make that for the 2020 year. I would just look for a second.
I think you could just have Commissioner Perschbacher and Commissioner Gillis agree with that.
I agree.
And Commissioner Gillis the same? Okay. Recognizing Commissioner Ronan? Oh, no, okay. Any discussion? Seeing no other discussion, I'd just like to thank everybody for spirited debate. And I think this will really help our downtown businesses. And I think it was worth the discussion to get to a point where we have a policy that is clear. Seeing no other discussion, we can move to a roll call vote. Jeremy, I would just ask that you read the motion just one more time.
Yep, I was going to suggest that. So what I have, correct me if I'm wrong, Vice Mayor, is waive outdoor dining fees for brick and mortar businesses for the 2020 outdoor dining season that do not exceed 2 parking spaces.
Yes.
You left out downtown.
Oh yeah, they're downtown brick and mortar.
Or downtown brick and mortar. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
I guess a point of clarification, do we have to clarify downtown or brick and mortar?
I would like it clarified as downtown and brick and mortar.
Mike, do you have any guidance on how that plays?
I'm fine with the brick and mortar. I don't know necessarily the boundaries on how you define downtown. I presume, if you define them as the DDA district, that would work. If it's something else, then you should define what you think that means. But
Mayor, it's already covered in the policy about who's eligible for these licenses. The district is already defined.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other discussion, let's vote.
Okay. Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Nay.
Commissioner Alsager,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay.
Mayor, I would just indicate so that the commission knows that we did have one business that has already paid for their 2020 license. So based on this action that you just took, we will refund their payment to them, just so you know.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay. I believe next on our agenda is the announcements on city-related issues and new business. And anyone have any announcements or new business tonight? Manager Ridley?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I wanted to give the update that I've been giving on where we are with the response to the coronavirus. And when we look at service levels, as you know, since the very beginning, we've had fire, police, wastewater, water, and airport that have been providing their regular services as well as trash collection. Based on the lifted restrictions over the last couple of weeks for outdoor work, we've also increased our park staffing and our streets department to be more full-time for on-premise work. And then based on last week's restrictions for construction activity, we also have more of building safety and DPW engineering that are moving toward more full-time on-premise work. In other areas, we continue to evaluate the service levels on a weekly basis based on the executive orders that are in place. As you know, this week, the second round of the spring leaf pickup is taking place for those residents who were reliant on landscaping services. And also this week, the no-fee brush chipping is taking place for those who signed up during the sign-up period. But the biggest news I have for you in the community tonight has to do with curbside recycling. And as you know, the Isabella County MRF is still closed. but we understand the stockpile that many of our residents have accumulated in their houses, garage, and sheds in an effort to not send those recyclables to the landfill. And so we've been looking at options of how to help out those residents during this time while the MRF is still closed. And I wanted to let you know that we'll be sending out some public information tomorrow to announce a one-time special pickup of curbside recycling. We've signed a contract with Republic Services, who provides our trash pickup, and they are going to complete this special curbside recycling pickup for our residential properties. But it will be a little bit different than what we have seen in the past, since it's a special pickup with a different vendor. They will be completing this one-time pickup the week of May 18th, which is next week, and it will be curbside on the same day as residential trash pickup. It will be necessary for people to have their blue recycling bin out at the curb, so that Republic knows where to stop to pick up the recycling. But based on the expected backlog, we expect that there may be additional boxes next to it with each resident's recycling. We would just ask that those either be plastic boxes that can be left there, like some residents currently do, or that they be cardboard boxes. They cannot be in plastic bags. They cannot pick up recycling in plastic bags. And they also will not be able to accept shredded paper this time. And as usual, there's no styrofoam, pizza boxes, or colored glass. That is part of curbside recycling. And all of the other cardboard that isn't the boxes that are accumulated will need to be flattened, just like it always is. So as I indicated, we're going to be doing some public service announcements throughout the week to make sure our residents know about this. But the important thing is to recognize that this is just a special one-time pickup to help get rid of that backlog while the MRF is still closed. So we're excited to be able to offer that next week to help people get some of that out of their garages and sheds. And then lastly, as I'm sure you're all noticing, we're starting to notice throughout the community that patience levels seems to be decreasing while stress levels of some of our residents appear to be increasing. So I think it's important for all of us to remember, both as leaders of the city and as residents of the city, that every individual has different thoughts and different firsthand experiences with how they've had to deal with this coronavirus. And I think it becomes even more important now, even more than ever, to be compassionate and kind and recognize that each person you come in contact with may have a different story. And I think it's important for us as we continue to do this journey through this pandemic, that particularly as leaders, we keep that in mind. And we've also been suggesting that to staff, that we need to keep that in mind in all of our interactions with our residents. So that completes my update, but I would be happy to answer any questions if the commission has any.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, first I want to thank Manager Ridley for finding a solution to the backlog of our recyclables. I am also in that situation, sheds and trailers and things that are being filled up with recyclables. So I also want to thank our community members for doing what they can for each other and following the governor's orders for social distancing and wearing masks when they are in public enclosed places. I think with all of us doing our little parts of trying to stay home if possible, and the workers that do have to go to work and our healthcare workers, you are our heroes. You are the ones that are keeping our community safe and keeping our community members healthy and doing the work in our hospitals and doctor's office to treat those that have been infected by COVID. When I look out into our community, I see more people talking to each other, not closely, of course, 6 feet, or saying nicer things in the grocery store, excuse me, and, you know, no problem, I'll wait for someone to pass, and it will be an acknowledgement of those kind of actions. So I know all of us know what each other are dealing with. And just like Nancy, Manager Ridley said, the more compassion and the more nice greetings and things that we can put out there in the universe, I think is the only way we're going to get through this pandemic, is to continuously put good things in the universe. And hopefully it will be granted a little relief so we can get back to some normalcy. I just also want to recognize our teachers. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and they are doing their best to keep our students up in learning and the academics, which is, as you can imagine, very difficult during these times with some of our students not having electronic or internet access, and worrying if they going to have 2 meals a day. And so my hat's off to the teachers and the administrators in our public school systems and charters and private schools that are doing what they can to keep our children still learning and a little bit of normalcy of their childhood. And so, and to all of my fellow city commissioners and everyone within this Zoom meeting, thank you for doing what you're doing and keeping the faith that we're going to come out of this on the other side and probably be a much better people for it. So thank you, community members. Thank you, fellow city commissioners and staff.
Any other announcements or new business? I would just echo the comments by Commissioner Gillis and Manager Ridley that you know, it's been a tough time for a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of frustration with people's work environment, whether it be from home or if you're one of the many people being frustrated by our unemployment system or at work and not necessarily receiving full employment, or people who are, you know, losing loved ones. It's been a very tough time, and all indications sort of point that things are getting better, but it's going to take more time. And so it is really a time to be patient, but also aware of, you know, the positives that are going on. A lot of people are working together in the community and trying to do their best and be there for each other as best we can. So it's these past 6 or 7 weeks have been stressful and very enlightening, and so it's been a very chaotic sort of, you know, both ends of the spectrum sort of time, and that's very rough on many people. So I think our government is very aware of those stresses, and we're trying to do our best to help those in our community. So without any other hands up, I guess we can move on to our second public comment section, those that are any city related business. It doesn't look like anyone else has joined our meeting. Manager Ridley, do we have any comments emailed to the commission?
No, Mayor, I've not received any email comments from the public.
Okay. I will close our second public comment session. And next on our agenda is a work session with the 2021-2026 capital improvement plan presentation, and then a discussion on that plan. Does the commission want to recess for a few minutes? Kind of see a hands up, hands down kind of thing. No from Commissioner Lalone. Commissioner Alsager. Hey, Mary, you're muted. I can't hear what you're saying. Mary, you're still muted.
So I'm sorry about that. I said perhaps a short recess.
Yep. Why don't we take, 3-minute recess, 5 minutes? Let's take 5 minutes. So we'll reconvene about 8:50. I think I'm back. We will reconvene now for our work session. And first on the work session is a presentation of the capital improvement plan. And so I'll hand this over to Nancy or Chris.
I'll start off. We typically do for you a short presentation on the capital improvement plan that gives like a major overview of what's in the plan. So we have with us tonight Chris Saladin, who's the Assistant Finance Director, who has put this presentation together. And what he did is he pre-recorded this presentation so that he can play it for you and it will show up on your screen for you. And then he would be available for any questions you might have at the end of it. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Carrie, go ahead and start the video, please. Good evening. Tonight I'm here to present the 2021 through 2026 capital improvement plan. This plan was constructed prior to COVID-19 impacting the United States. At this point, we're assuming that we can afford the plan as presented. If we know more when we construct the 2021 budget in a few months, we can make adjustments to projects at that time. The capital improvement plan is a mechanism that allows the city to maintain and improve our community's public infrastructure. These projects represent tangible improvements and changes that our residents can see and touch and have a direct impact on the community. The plan is a culmination of input from various stakeholders that allows us to analyze what is possible and then prioritize our expenditures to best meet the needs of our community. Tonight's presentation will mostly focus on projects that are planned for 2021. We're about to begin the process of creating the 2021 operating budget, so it's important to understand and be committed to these projects. If there are projects that need to be modified, removed, or added, we would appreciate knowing sooner rather than later so we have time to incorporate the changes into the budget process. We will also briefly look at projects that are in the later years of the plan. So what gets included in the capital improvement plan? Projects that cost at least $20,000, span at least 10 years or longer. As you look at some of the project pages, you'll see in the detail that some projects were added or modified based on input received during the master plan process. Since the master plan has not been approved yet, further discussion may be needed to ensure those new or reprioritized projects have support from the Planning Commission and City Commission. Please let us know if you have any concerns with the draft master plan as it relates to the CIP. The appendices section now includes a long-term infrastructure cost estimate for our water and wastewater funds. In constructing the CIP, we look to many sources to gather input when deciding what projects to prioritize. One commonly asked question is, what is a PASER rating? It's a 1 to 10 scale that's used to assess the condition of a paved surface. In our plan, this covers roads, parking lots, and sidewalks. The cash flow pages have a few purposes. They summarize everything in the plan on a few pages, so it's easy to evaluate financial impact and timing of the proposed projects. This helps us ensure we have adequate reserves in place for future projects. I'd also like to remind everyone that the affordability of the projects listed over the next 6 years is contingent on the state delivering on its projected Act 51 contributions. This is important because we used to contribute capital improvement funds to our local street fund, as well as funding our sidewalk projects. All of that is now covered by our Act 51 street funds. As we get into the individual 2021 projects, I'm going to give a brief explanation of the ones that are new, have changed significantly, or are the more common questions that we get related to the capital improvement plan. In slides that identify grant funding, some of those projects don't have grants specifically identified at this point, but we're always looking for grant opportunities. For our City Hall chambers, the audiovisual equipment at City Hall has been having increasing issues as it ages. This project was scheduled for 2023 in last year's capital improvement plan, but it's been moved up to address the issues. Our fire office renovation, this project replaces office furniture, storage, and updates work areas to increase productivity. For our City Hall HVAC, this project takes advantage of the ability to use a quote-unquote free cooling during our cool weather months. For downtown, we're set to reconstruct the alley between Michigan and University. Based on prior direction from the City Commission, this project is set to be special assessed, with property owners covering 70% of the cost and the city covering 30% of the cost. The City Commission will need to have further discussion before the plan is approved. For our parking lots, we're looking at reconstructing parking lot number 6, which is on the corner of University and Illinois. We're also going to be reconstructing parking lot number 8, which is on the corner of Broadway and Lansing. For our streetscape improvements, we're looking at adding downtown amenities like stamped concrete at the edge of the sidewalk, tree grates, benches, bike racks, trash cans to East Illinois between Main and Franklin along both sides of the street. And this project will be in coordination with the street reconstruction and pedestrian lighting in that area. For parks, we have a couple of projects that incorporate input from our draft master plan. Our Canal Street Park project is adding a playground and swing set to the park that is already there. For our East Side Park improvements, this is adding pickleball courts, repairing tennis courts, and redesigning the Horizon Park site plan for future year projects. For our public works projects, pedestrian lighting is set to go on Illinois from Main to Fancher. And similar to the downtown alleys, this project is set to be special assessed, with property owners covering 70% of the cost and the city covering 30%. We'll need a City Commission input prior to adopting the plan. Our new sidewalk is on Crapo from North Drive to where it dead ends, Gaylord from Kinney to Fancher, and Southmore from Crawford to Watson. Our sidewalk replacement is set for sections of sidewalk with a low Payzer rating and complaint locations throughout the city. For our storm sewer extension, this is a several-year project that aims to extend storm sewer in front of properties that do not currently have access. The intention of this program is to give property owners someplace to properly discharge their sump pumps. Our 2021 airport project is the continuation of tree abatement. This basically clears out trees that are tall enough to threaten the glide slope around the airport, which if that happens, then we have to close the airport at night. For local streets, we're set to reconstruct Illinois from Main to Fancher, Gaylord, Fancher to Mission, and we're going to be performing thin overlays on Chippewa, Franklin, Lansing, Palmer, and University. For wastewater in 2021, our primary projects are replacing electrical panels, lab hood cabinets, and rebuilding primary number 1. For our water department, the largest projects scheduled for 2021 are the reservoir actuator replacement, which are basically opens and closes valves to allow water through automatically at certain times, and replacing the roof on our main water plant. Looking beyond 2021, this is a list of our recurring maintenance and improvement projects. Also beyond 2021, this is a list of the projects that are more one-time in nature. Table 8 in the back of the capital improvement plan shows projects that are not currently in our capital improvement plan, but are identified as possible future projects. They may not be in the plan because of funding considerations or because we don't have enough information to place them in the plan yet. These are the topics that we're going to cover at the May 11th work session. During our May 25th work session, we're going to cover any questions that are outstanding from May 11th, We're also going to answer any city commissioner questions. And we respectfully request that city commissioners get their questions to Manager Ridley by May 15th. In addition to the work sessions, the city charter requires adoption of the capital improvement plan by June 8th. And we will be presenting the 2021 operating budget with these capital improvement plan projects on September 14th. Does anybody have any questions on the capital improvement plan?
Commissioner Toles.
Chris, I have one question on that Pacer scale, which is 1 through 10. What do you consider on the low end something that would need immediate attention?
I'm probably going to turn this over to Jason because he has much more expertise on that than I do.
Yeah, so if we're looking at the Pacer rating of a street, then anything 3 or below would be a straight reconstruct. You know, like an immediate, like that would be in terrible shape. I don't know if we even have any 3s at this point. 4 and 5 would be, depending on what its history is, might need a reconstruct. Anything above that would likely get a overlay or a mill and overlay.
Because I was looking at the spreadsheet there on some of the roads, and there were some 4s, 5s, 7s, and 9s on there. And I didn't see any 3s on there, so.
Yeah, and some of the streets have been, the curbs have been overlaid, and so that doesn't, so we can't do a simple overlay anymore because they've been overlaid too many times. And so at some point we need to reconstruct those.
Okay, thank you.
And commissioners, I would just mention, I didn't notice this before when I looked at Chris's video that he did ahead of time, and so I apologize, Chris. But the public hearing on the capital improvement plan is actually on May 26th.
Oh.
May 25th is Memorial Day. And so we had moved our meeting to Tuesday, and I should have caught that ahead of time. I apologize for that. But that public hearing will actually be on Tuesday, which is your next regular meeting. I'm sorry, Chris.
This might be looking a little bit down the road, but is there a timeline for when we'll hear from the state about Act 51 funding or any other revenue sharing that we might see impacted?
The state
go
go ahead,
Greg.
Nancy.
No, you go ahead.
The state put out some recent projections, and right now, based on those projections, we're in okay shape. We should be able to afford everything definitely in the first 5 years of the project. But if that funding drops, then right now 2026 is affordable, but it's not by very much. So if those projections don't come to fruition, then the outer year of the plan is at risk.
Okay.
And the state has indicated that they'll be having their revenue estimating conference. I believe it's scheduled for this Friday, May 15th. And so we expect that we will get additional updates on state shared revenue. And I'm not sure if at that time they'll update Act 51 numbers in addition to that or not, but we should have some indications from the state at the end of this week.
Is that accessible to the public, like that conference, or?
I don't believe so. I think they just come out with a report after they make a public report once they've agreed upon the estimates. Is that correct, Marianne?
Actually, they are public. I'm not for sure how you get to watch those, but they are public.
We can try to do some research into that.
Yeah. Commissioner Ronan? George, you're on mute.
Sorry, I should have asked this ahead of time, but when we look at these funds, if they're not spent for capital improvement, if we reduce this in some way, what happens to them?
It depends on which funding source you're looking at, Commissioner Ronan, because some of the funding sources can be used for other things, but others cannot. For instance, Act 51 funds can only be spent on streets and sidewalks. So if we reduce that, we wouldn't be able to use it for, let's say, an improvement to City Hall. So it really depends on which of the funding sources you're looking at to know what flexibility there might be.
Can I ask a follow-up? Just real quick. So, but they'd all have to be used for some type of capital improvement. I mean, we might be able to switch the box of capital improvement, but they'd all need to be used. I was thinking particularly about the stuff for the park, to be honest. I mean,
most of the parks projects are funded by the capital improvement fund dollars, and you have flexibility in how much is allocated to the capital improvement fund each year before tax bills are sent out. So we've already got a commitment of how much would be allocated for the current year, but in future years, you would have some flexibility in changing that allocation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris before we dive a little deeper? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward.
So Mayor, the items we've outlined in your work session packet are the ones that were in the cover letter of the capital improvement and that Chris mentioned in one of his slides. And as we put this together with more of the details, we realized that this may be a lot for you to get through in one work session. So we can get through as much as you can this evening, recognizing that we can pick up and do some of them at your May 26th meeting. Because at that point in time, the other thing that we would be talking about is any written questions that you would have submitted by that time. So we could delay discussion of a couple or one or two of these items to May 26th, depending on how the discussion goes this evening.
Okay. I believe the first item is the long-term needs for water, wastewater, and infrastructure. And that is in table 4, which is page 148 of your capital improvement plan. And I think this came out of last year, a request by the commission for just concern about being aware of long-term costs to major projects and infrastructure that the city needs to be viable for our residents. And are there any questions on the information presented on page 148? I guess my initial, just looking at that, those pages, because these go beyond what our current capital improvement plan actually talks about. So in some of these years, especially when you look at wastewater in 2032, there's a $10 million estimated capital project. And overall, through those years, we're looking at $19 million for wastewater and about $5.5 million for water projects. I guess to me, it just screamed, how much can we afford? And it looks like we're spending, last few years, we've spent around either $3 or $6 million in our capital improvement plans. And I think, like we've talked about before, like Commissioner Tolles has pointed out, there's a lot of questions about revenue sources and how this is going to impact us long term.
I guess I would start out by saying these projects are just in water and wastewater. And I think the most important thing to notice on the wastewater one is the asterisk at the top of it. because this was put together based on our SAW grant study and some of the analysis that came out of that. But as you know, in this year's plan, we have an engineering study being done that will help us to know, does it make sense to continue to replace our existing infrastructure at the wastewater plant, or are we better to look at changing how some of those processes work? And certainly if we have a year where it's in the $10 million range, we would be looking at a bond issue for that kind of thing to spread those costs out over multiple years. The last bond issue for the wastewater treatment plant was just paid off, I believe it was in 2019. And so right now we're in a situation where we do not have any outstanding bonds for the wastewater plant. So depending on what that engineering study tells us about what really is needed over those next years, if there's still a year like that, we would consider doing a bond issue.
Are there any other questions for Manager Ridley on table 4? Besides table 4, is there more information on what those projects are in the capital improvement plan?
We have oodles and oodles of spreadsheets that back up that table that list each of the individual projects in each of those years.
Okay. Guess we can move on, seeing no other questions. Is there any advice or reactions? Is this the information that the commission is looking for? Seeing a lot of head nodding. Okay. I guess we can move on. Next is the special assessment for alleys and pedestrian lighting. I'm sure this is probably going to be a little more conversation heavy. This is covered in a few pages in the capital improvement plan. But really the main question here is our special assessment approach to alleyways and pedestrian lighting. So I guess we can.
I'm sorry, I would indicate the 2 pages that we referenced, there is a typo on one of those. It says page 35. It should actually be page 33 is where the alley project is outlined to tell you which alley it is. So it's really on page 33 and 74. And because of the timing issues that we've had with special assessment processes, you'll recall the one from Michigan Street earlier this year, we were thinking that on those projects that are going to have special assessments, that it would make more sense to start the special assessment process in the fall so that we have it done before we actually bid the project, and so that we don't have those conflicts like we had this past year of trying to make a decision as the bidding was going on. But because of the conversations this year about special assessment for downtown, and as Mr. Irwin indicated in his email that he sent for your public comment tonight, I think it's important to have that discussion again about the policy direction of, do we truly want to continue to treat downtown like we treat the rest of the city, in having alley projects be partially special assessed and partially city paid, and having pedestrian lighting partially special assessed and partially city paid. So we're looking for some direction from you if that's still the proper allocation that you want to use for those type of projects as we move forward.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I'm not particularly sophisticated in this area, but I wonder if there's been any discussion at all about just, there's some infrastructure stuff that's critical and there's some that's nice to have, but maybe not critical. I'm not sure where this falls, but given the likely hit we may take because of the economic implications of COVID-19, I'm just not, I'd just be interested in hearing from other commissioners how important they view these particular projects downtown in terms of charging 70% on properties that are likely to be a little bit vacant, or maybe not. I mean, it may be, we'll get into it and we'll say, oh, they're all rented and they have money. And I just wonder if there's been any thought about that.
Commissioner Tolis?
I'm not really in favor of this 70-30 split for doing the alleys. And I have to agree with Commissioner Ronan, this is not a big necessity right now. But I think we're gonna have to work with that because I don't think really that's a fair split. So I think we're gonna have to do some work there. That's my feeling on that.
I guess I would ask the commissioners, if you don't feel 70-30 is appropriate, what would be appropriate? Something to think about. Commissioner Alsager?
Just a thought about, the timing of making decisions is, it's probably important that we pay attention as businesses get the opportunity to reopen and we see what our landscape is going to be looking like before we make some of those decisions that impact those businesses.
I see Commissioner Ronan's hand up. Commissioner Tolis still has your hand up.
I'm sorry.
And Commissioner Alsager, you make a good point about the timing because the capital improvement plan does have to be approved by the city commission at your first meeting in June, according to the charter, but it certainly is amendable after it's approved. So throughout the summer and even into the fall, we can make amendments to it once we know more about how the economy is looking and how things are recovering. I think these two issues, though, the economy plays into a part of a little bit, but also it's just the policy direction of the special assessment that may or may not be related to the economy. So to the extent you have any thoughts on the policy direction that aren't economy related, those would be helpful to have now. But if you want to wait and see how the economy plays out, then certainly we can amend the plan at a later
time. Obviously, as Manager Ridley said, this is amendable, and later this year, this alleyway project will potentially go out for bid. I think we dealt with something already this year where there was a 70-30 split, and we modified that project in several ways to make it less expensive, and then we ended up covering the entirety of the cost. I'm not sure that this project presents those same tools to modify, and so I would ask commissioners, if 70-30 is not ideal, what is the ideal to share cost or not? And I think this is a time, it might not be the definitive time to make that decision, but I think we should talk about it. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, just to be clear, so I think we modified, or I voted to modify the percentage on Michigan Street, but some of those businesses have been closed. I mean, they're not even, the people who own the buildings, they're not even generating income, right? So, I mean, I think those are different decisions under those conditions, under those contingencies are different from me. So if you said, do I think a 70-30 split is a good idea? Probably, if the economy is doing well and people are doing well, I don't necessarily have any difficulty with it. But given a business's inability to generate any income, for me at least, it's an issue.
Well, I mean, looking at that alleyway, off the top of my head, you can see that Marty's will be affected. Dog Central has been open for takeout, but I'm sure their sales have taken a hit. The bike shop is there, Motorless Motion. I'm sure they were closed for a while. They've recently reopened, but I think most of those places have probably taken some sort of hit comparable to what happened on Michigan Street. So, and I don't think there's an area of town that hasn't been affected. Commissioner Gillis?
Concerns because this is how we treat alleyways in residential areas. If they were to petition the city commission that they wanted their alley resurfaced or paved, if it was a dirt alley, the property owners on either side of the alleys would be asked to contribute 70%. We've been doing this initially, well, I'm not sure how many years we've been doing it, as long as I've been on the city commission. So I have a problem with treating those two entities differently, that we're going to pay for downtown business alleyways to be done or not pay, or 70-30, but yet, or even lower the percentage if that's what the majority of the commission desires. Yet our residents that may want an alley upgrade would still be expected to commit 70%. So it's something to consider, that we're treating these two entities differently. If you were more comfortable, if the majority of the city commissioners were more comfortable in putting those alleyway renovations out another year, and then discuss a solution, it might be more beneficial to see where we are a year from now than to proceed in this fashion, spending this type of money, knowing that we're in this deep where people may not have the money to contribute. So it might be a wait and see kind of game, and I would be more comfortable if many of these capital improvement projects were actually suspended for 1 year, just to see what the revenue sources are going to look like next year, because we are going to take a hit. There's no doubt we're going to take a hit. And if not, revenue sharing, gas taxes are down. We won't be receiving as much because people aren't traveling. Lots of influences to reduce our revenue stream, along with many people that I'm sure are going to go to the tax tribunal, tax review, to try to reduce their taxable values. Or it may even come out that we are reducing taxable values because of the recession or depression we're going to be in by the end of the year. So many of these projects, if they are not critical and they're not essential to be done for next year, I am more comfortable in proceeding with essential and critical infrastructure improvements in our capital improvement, rather than things that we would like to happen and suspend them for 1 year. That is not to mean that it's not going to happen. It's just that we are suspending it or delaying it for 1 year to see how our revenue streams are affected after this COVID. Thank you.
Maybe this is a question for Jason, just on the necessity of, it has a Paisley rating of 3, and you kind of indicated that kind of means that it has to be totally reconstructed. What's the likely outcome if, you continue to let that deteriorate?
Well, I suppose on the plus side, it's not going to cost any more to fix later. I mean, sometimes when you're talking about repairing things, you want to catch it before it gets worse, so you don't have to do more work. But being that it's at a 3 already, it needs a complete reconstruct. It will probably stay in relatively the same shape, I suppose, but it is in pretty bad shape right now. So
Sure is. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, when we're talking about property owners in alleyways, they elect to have it done. So I can talk to my neighbors. I've got an alleyway behind my house. I can get them together. We can say, hey, we want to do this. When we're talking about this stuff downtown, they're not electing to have this done. They're being told it's going to be done. So there's just, I understand the contingencies, but they're a little bit different. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So that kind of brings us back to the original question. Is there direction for staff on changing that 70-30 special assessment split? And what criteria are you willing to use? Commissioner Tolis?
I think with the defunding of the TIFA and being that these alleys are in a business district, I think the TIFA should have never been defunded. You could have used funds from the TIFA to repair these alleys. And I think this is going to be a big burden on business people down here. I really do, being that we're in the predicament we're in right now. But 70-30 is just unreasonable, in my opinion. And I have to agree with Commissioner Gillis. I think we need just to stick to essential items that we need to get done. Looking at some of this stuff, and it just can be pushed back. A lot of the items, half of page 2 can be pushed back with, parks, and we're doing the rest of the stuff. That can wait as far as I'm concerned. You can put it on hold because it's not essential. And then we can see where we're at, 3 months or 6 months from now. I'm just not comfortable with that. I'd rather be in a sort of a hold mode right now and see, what the problems are going to be down the line.
Well, I appreciate the perspective on the TIFA board. I think some of the reasoning behind the reorganization of what the TIFA board addressed was because that its funding sources really never were able to cover the projects that we assigned for it, which were parking lots and alleyways. And I think it was currently the TIFA board is covering several parking lot projects over the next few years. And so there's no money there to move around.
Well, I have to agree with you partially, but the whole problem, there's no money there. You have to look at lot 8 that's next to my building. That's never had anything done to it except patches put on it. And I mean, now we're in here and I'm looking, we're going to replace flower planters downtown because they've got cracks in them, or we're going to replace all the benches down there, which I see some of the benches are in piles behind Public Works right now. I don't understand it. They were composite material. They have cast iron legs. You have a few of the legs that are broken. Get replacement legs for those and get them put back out there. Those are not a cheap item. Those benches had to be in excess of $500 a piece, and they're sitting in a pile, in a junk pile by Public Works. You have to take the money that comes in and spend it on infrastructure, not just blow it, you know. And that's why we're in the predicament that we're at right now. The lots are really bad shape because they weren't maintained over the years.
Commissioner Alsager?
Well, from watching the video, I got the impression that worse funding now affects the later years of the plan. But I do appreciate that our discussion now is really focusing on what should be done now and what needs to be done now, even though there is funding now.
And I was just going to indicate that I indicated it in the cover letter. The majority of this plan was put together before we got into this coronavirus pandemic. So we didn't have time to make adjustments to it. But certainly if the commission's desire is to try to scale back projects for 2021 so that the only ones that we're looking at doing are the ones that are more in the critical nature, we can spend some time looking at that and bring you some revisions as we bring you the 2021 budget in September, because at that point in time, we'll have a little bit better feel for what the economy looks like, and we would have time to provide some assessment for you of what truly is critical. So if that's the direction that you want us to go, I guess I would suggest that we can have some discussions at the staff level to see how quickly we can do that, to know if we can give you good advice on that before you have to approve it on June 8th, or whether we would recommend you approve it as is, recognizing we'll bring you amendments later, but we can spend some time trying to identify how long it would take us to do that piece of it for you, if that's your desire to focus on just critical.
I appreciate that.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
The thing is that when we first started talking about this, it was, we were told this is it's a living document. We can make changes to it. Once, even if we approve it as is in June, we can still make changes to it. We can still amend it. We can pull things out. We can add things to it. We can, we can make changes. I think that right now we're just trying to get a feel for it. And I think that everybody needs to understand that it's not set in stone. We're able to say, like Nancy said, in September, we may say, hey, our economy still sucks. It doesn't look like it's moving anywhere. Let's pull back some of this money. Let's only do basic, real important things. Let's not do some of the park stuff. Let's not do some of the repair things that don't need to be done. Or we may say, let's not do the big projects. Let's do a bunch of small projects just so that the city is at least getting some facelift. But we can make that change in September, or we can, we can decide then when we do our budget and make a decision. We don't have to say right now, this is what we need, or this is what we don't need. We don't want to make a rash decision. We don't want to react on this. We want to have other things brought to us and make a very well thought out decision here.
And I agree with Vice Mayor Perschbacher. The only other thing I think is important to remember, and maybe the new commissioners aren't even aware of, is our Public Works engineering staff does start designing these projects in the fall so that we have them ready to bid as soon as we can. So the sooner we know if we're going to not do some projects for 2021, the better, because that way they know how to focus their time and efforts. But certainly any design, a lot of the design they do would carry over into the following year as well. So it wouldn't be a total waste of time, but they will need some direction on which projects they should be focusing most of their efforts on so that we can get those bid as early as we can.
Mr. Ronan?
Yeah, I'll again admit to one of those new commissioners who doesn't quite understand the timing. When would these things be bid, or when would, I mean, is any of this stuff already in play? I mean, yeah, when would it be bid? What's the critical date? I guess.
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're in some of the survey and design phase of some of these projects now. And they would typically bid those January or February. Jason, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's the goal. They tend to get surveyed and designed, late summer to in the fall area, and then we aim to bid them early next year, so that we can get good pricing.
Commissioner Alsager?
Well, I appreciate Commissioner Pierschbacher's comments, just again, being a new one, just to not have a sense of the timing and the work. I'm not meaning to imply that the city hasn't put in a lot of work to make this happen.
And I think the questions related to this area were, is the special assessment a policy issue or is it an economics issue? If it's economics, we can wait and find out. If it's a policy issue, it would be helpful to have your direction now.
Right. That's going to lead to the affordability of these projects and the timing. Commissioner Gillis.
I again will repeat that I really do believe we should do critical and essential expenditures. I believe that if the COVID would have been before this document was created, it would look very different than what we are looking at this month. So I have a problem. We are not, I'm not suspending or eliminating these projects. I just think it would be more mindful and more prudent to eliminate projects that are not critical or essential, and allowing even so if we decided to assess alleys next year, these businesses would be in a much better predicament to, well, hopefully, to help with that assessment or be able to incur that expense than they ever will next year. Well, we're looking at 2021. So if we suspended some of these improvements that aren't critical or essential, they wouldn't come to business owners until 2022. So we're giving them this year and next year to get back on their feet and hopefully being in a much better business status to then accommodate the assessments. I think all of us, all the way around the board, commissioners, staff, community members, business members, are going to be in a much better position to determine what they can afford, what we can expect them to afford. But I'm not comfortable this year, even if it is a living document, and yes, we do change this, but most of the time, things that are passed in the capital improvement, staff starts working them into the budget and finding ways to make these things happen in 2021. So staff's going to be having a lot of other things. Some unknowns are going to come up for us and for staff to deal with. So I think limiting some of those improvements and some of that work will be helpful, because I think they're going to be dealing with some other things that we may have not even considered. So I don't feel comfortable with moving ahead with this capital improvement with things such as park improvements or new sidewalks. That doesn't have to happen. There are a lot of things on this list that I have already marked that I wanted to discuss in eliminating. So
Thank
thank you.
Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, that's okay.
I was going to say that the special assessment, I think, is not a policy issue. I think it is a possible revenue recession issue. that we have to look at, just like we did with Michigan Street. When we were talking about Michigan Street and we were talking about doing this special assessment, then we had, we had this understanding that the coronavirus was going to possibly do some shutdown in our area, was going to disrupt businesses, and we made the decision then. So I don't think this is so much a policy issue. I think that this is a recession issue and the unknown that's out there.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Vice Mayor Perschbacher said, and I think every commissioner is probably different, right? I don't know if we have to vote or something, but I also think that it's an economic issue, right? It's not a policy issue for me. It's just basic economics at this point. I support the policy. It's just the timing that worries me.
Okay. Commissioner Gillis?
Thank you. And that is the gist of it. I mean, that's the bottom layer. Are we going to proceed with all these commitments when we know that it's an economic issue? This may not be an economic issue in 2022, but it will be if we're trying to decide it in 2020 for 2021. We don't have a feeling of the recovery of the economic, the businesses, and if the economy is going to come back 25%, 50%, or are still people in this fall still going to be staying home and not entering into our restaurants and our business storefronts. So that uncertainty, because some of these things are not critical, that uncertainty to give us a year from now, finding out how it affects us as a municipality, seeing how it affects business people, seeing how it affects us as the revenue stream, is the most prudent path, rather than saying, well, we're going to take it all on ourselves. We're not going to do any special assessment because everybody's dealing with COVID right now and they can't afford it. And I'm not comfortable with waiving all fees or waiving all expenditures outside of what we're expending from City Hall, because this year is so uncertain. We can't suck it up, all those expenses, and put it as a burden to us. We can't do that with all of these projects that might, all the projects that we're asking people to buy in and then pay some. So, and I again reiterate, I'm not saying suspending or dropping these projects, I am saying suspending it for 1 year, not permanently.
Commissioner Tolis?
I have to agree with Commissioner Gillis, and I also agree with Manager Ridley. If you look at our second page of the whole work session, I think those are items that, aren't essential right now and it can be pushed back a year. I think that should be done on that point. We have to work on the 70-30 split, but I would have the new commissioners look at page 37 on downtown individual projects. It describes it. If you look at the reconstructions of the lots, okay, you have lot 6, $91,000 to redo that lot. You look at lot 7, $191. Look at lot 8, $323,000. That's the lot that's next to my lot that's never had anything done. And that's what I'm telling you about expenditures the past 15 years. I mean, that was just neglected. I mean, we have to start looking at this stuff and sharpen up on it seriously, because that's what it turns into. Why are you doing only $91,000 to reconstruct 6, and it's costing you $323,000 to do lot 8? Because it's in way terrible shape. But I mean, I have to agree with Nancy. I think we just have to have staff look at this, thin out the fat in it. Let's postpone some of the stuff for a year that doesn't need to be done right now. And that would be like page 2. Also, Commissioner Gillis talked about sidewalks. That's not necessary right now. Let's just do the necessary stuff and then see where we're at 3 months, 6 months from now. It just makes sense.
Commissioner Lalone?
I think I'm in agreement that we should have the city look at, reevaluate these projects and then say which are essential and need to be done right now, and which ones we can hold off for a year. I think that's the most prudent thing. And I also agree that the 70-30 thing is more of a economic issue of revenue that we should discuss later. But I think it makes sense to do critical stuff this year since we don't know. But I don't know I'd like to know what staff considers would be essential.
Commissioner Ronan?
Oh, I apologize.
I guess,
Well, that's some staff direction. And we're coming up on an hour of a work session.
we are, yep.
Timekeeper, don't you know?
Yeah. You're already home.
It just doesn't feel like I'm home.
So I think what I'm hearing is that a number of you would like us to review the 2021 projects and bring you a revised recommendation about which ones we believe could be readily put off for a year if in fact our economy does not bounce back very quickly, so that you would already know which ones could be delayed for a year. Is that accurate?
Seems to be the consensus.
Yes.
So what I need to do is talk to the staff to know if that's something we can turn around in 2 weeks before your next meeting, or if that's something we would need to bring to you at your June 8th meeting right before approval. Again, recognizing it can be amended, but we can talk about that and I can get back to you to let you know how long we think it might take us to do that accurate assessment for you. And then we can plan from there.
Everybody seems okay with that. I think this puts a lot of onus on the commission to get your questions in, review these documents very carefully, and so when we meet again, that we're can be, I suppose, more can act more swiftly to look at specific projects and policies that are presented. So. Manager, did you need anything, any further direction from the commission right now?
Yeah, I think you said it well, Mayor. The sooner you can get us your questions, that may help us to sort through some of that as we try to do that. So if you do have any additional questions on the whole document, if you could get those to us yet this week or by Monday, that would certainly be helpful for us. Otherwise, we will regroup and see how quickly we think we can get some reprioritization done for you.
Okay. Well, with no other hands up, I believe we can adjourn at 9:51. Have a good night, everybody.